So my name is Palkan Reshamwala. I am from the marketing team here at Schneider Electric NZ. For everybody that is new to Club Schneider, welcome. Club Schneider is designed as a community to support NZ electricians, helping you to upskill, network, and grow your electrical business. We are excited to share the insights into the rapidly growing and growing residential and commercial electric vehicle landscape, along with showcasing our recently launched smart EV residential charger. I think it's time for us to kick off the session. I'll start off with introducing our guest speaker for the day, Mike Casey, CEO of Rewiring Aotearoa, a charity working on energy, climate, and electrification research. He leads the charge in leveraging digital solutions to address some of the Aotearoa's most pressing challenges. His passion and commitment towards innovation and social change are highly remarkable. Welcome, Mike. We are excited to hear some of the key insights from your research and experience and answer some of our burning questions about EV world. We also have Diana, product manager for new energy landscape from Schneider Electric, who will kick off the panel discussions with Mike, followed by a product presentation by Jack, sales representative for EV in Schneider World. Welcome, Diana and Jack. Over to you, Diana and Mike.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Balkan. And thank you so much, Mike, for joining us for this webinar. It's pretty exciting to be able to have the chat and hear your insights on the electrification of New Zealand. So I would like to kick off with the first question to you. So do you think that the widespread EV adoption is feasible in New Zealand? Like, are we going to see a bunch of EVs around New Zealand in the near future?
Absolutely. And we might beat the Australians. Who knows? There's a good bit of ANZAC competition going on there. But the short answer is at the moment, about 75% of New Zealand's energy is fossil fuels. Those fossil fuels are sourced from the other side of the world. When you think about it at the moment in New Zealand, we buy our oil from Saudi Arabia, we refine it in Singapore, we ship it on 68 tankers to New Zealand, we roll it out around with 300,000 trucks per annum around the country to the pump, and then the New Zealand public will drive down to the pump using that energy they bought from last time to fill those cars up. And the future of that is just, when you think about it, it's just so inefficient the way that we do this. And there is now so much new technology on the horizon for the customer, but essentially I can generate that energy on my own rooftop and within a few meters of cabling deliver that to my car. And so for that reason, it's considerably cheaper than continuing to buy fossil fuels. I was over in Australia really recently presenting at a conference over there. And I was just shocked at how cheap your petrol and diesel is in comparison to ours. We're a small country with not much bargaining power that's further away from you guys. And as a result, New Zealand pays through the nose for fossil fuels, and we can generate electricity on our own rooftops at still more expensive than you guys, but a lot closer than what we can, demand on the worldwide commodities markets for fossil fuels. So the economic incentive for New Zealanders to electrify their vehicles is very, very strong. And I think some of the other things going on is that we don't have an automotive manufacturing industry in New Zealand. We don't have a strong fossil fuel lobbying group in New Zealand because we don't make a lot of fossil fuels. And so there is a really big opportunity, I think, in New Zealand to look at electrifying our car fleets. And you guys in Australia have done an absolutely amazing job of leading the charge. I think, you're up to 35% rooftop solar penetration, whereas we're well behind that. I think we're at about 3% at the moment. But I was actually crunching the numbers with a colleague today and realized that New Zealand solar prices are sitting at 2013 Australian prices. And between 2013 and today, you guys did about 2.5 million solar installations, right? So what's about to happen in New Zealand is unlocking really, really cheap electricity or really, really cheap energy for customers. And that ultimately means, at the end of the day, we're all homo economicus. And that means we're going to adopt electric vehicles because it's the cheaper thing to do.
That's great. Thank you. Another debate that I've been hearing, and we have been hearing that in Australia as well, is hydrogen versus EVs, versus battery EVs. Can you tell us how these two technologies will be positioned in the near future in New Zealand transportation?
Oh, I think 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, there might have been an argument for hydrogen simply because battery technology was expensive. But what we've seen in the last few years is battery technology plummet in price to now, really, when you think about it, being considerably cheaper than continuing to perpetually pay fossil fuel companies for your energy. And so, whereas hydrogen just hasn't had that drop in price for the customer. And I think there's a large number of reasons for that, but the general reason is that it creates a lot of energy to make hydrogen. So therefore, hydrogen is just a really inefficient battery. And we have a lot more efficient batteries on the market now. So you go with the best technology, which is energy storage on 4 wheels. And it seems to be now that I think, in the case of small and even light commercial vehicles, that is definitely where we're not seeing any hydrogen cars on the road. We're seeing an awful lot of battery electric vehicles. So I think the writing's on the wall there. The argument at the moment seems to be with heavy freight. I'm not so concerned about heavy freight because I'm really concerned about the welfare and the energy costs of the households of New Zealand and the small businesses and the farms of New Zealand. But even then, we're starting to see long range heavy freight be battery electric now. So, I think in reality, over the next few years, if you can't make something cheaper than diesel, then it's going to be very hard for it to become adopted. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
The other thing, being a farmer, I love the concept of generating energy myself. I love the fact that generating energy myself is the cheapest energy I'm ever going to get, and it's very, very hard for me as an individual customer to make hydrogen, and that's a problem.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, we have been seeing it here in Australia as well in the transformation of fleets, like big trucks as well, to electric. And that's right, like the generation on site is happening all across Australia as well, like to be able to generate on site, like putting a battery as well to be able to store the energy as well and use it when it's needed, to be able to power those trucks as well. It's happening, and so even EV trucks are here already, so it's happening as well. So
I think the thing, this is the way that the market's going. The market is going the way of the cheaper product, and we know that a kilometer driven by an electric car is far, far cheaper than a kilometer driven by a diesel car, and therefore, it kind of checks out. But there are a lot of really good people in the hydrogen market that were trying to do the right thing around emissions reductions. And, we shouldn't be about winning, only your ego needs to win an argument. So therefore, let's put our egos to one side and, welcome them over to, the battery technology side of things with open arms and make sure they're still part of the decarbonisation future that all countries need to go through.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think that needs to be done in New Zealand to accelerate the transition to home and vehicle electrification? What is needed?
Yeah, so we need to go through, at the moment, the cheapest energy you're ever going to get now is energy that comes from your own rooftop. And we've got the market signal there. And the issue that I think is the biggest issue is that we have the most affordable energy ever at our fingertips, but it's not necessarily the most accessible energy because there is an upfront capital cost. And so one of the things that I'm very, very, keen to work on and develop is financing products, because we are at the point in New Zealand now where in many, many cases, the electrification of our machines, the interest cost is going to be cheaper than the fossil fuels that you're currently spending, on every day. And so I'm trying to reframe the argument to be about, well, fossil fuel expense is just another form of debt in perpetuity, right? But it's like renting your energy forever, whereas this is a chance to get the mortgage and pay it off and own it moving forward. And so that's where I think our major role is at the moment is how to make the cheapest energy in the world affordable. And when I say affordable, I really mean accessible, because the whole role of finance is to alleviate that upfront capital cost. So that's the big thing that I'm working on. Now at the moment, it's EVs and rooftop solar seem to be going hand in hand in New Zealand, mainly because it's only the middle class and above that have space on their mortgages that can afford it, and they do the numbers and they work out actually this works. but 47% of the heads, 47% of the population of New Zealand live in rental properties. And then not all of the people who own their own homes have a mortgage. And so one of the big things is around pensioners often have they might own their own home, they might not have a mortgage, but they also suffer from cash flow issues. So how is it that you can get them to save money by paying the interest rather than continuing to pay for the fossil fuel? And so that's sort of what I'm big at working on. One of the things I've discovered, though, that's been really interesting in New Zealand, being a farmer myself, is that the ones that have been going to benefit the most from electrification of their vehicle fleets are farmers, because we drive so many more Ks than the average driver in New Zealand. So to put that in example, the average driver in New Zealand drives 11,000 kilometers per year. I'm not sure what it is for you guys in Australia, but I imagine it's probably somewhat similar. I drive 35,000 kilometers a year. And so on a per kilometer hour cost basis, electric vehicles, and so one of the big things that I'm focusing on at the moment is how to support our rural communities through this transition, because obviously one of the big things about New Zealand is we have such a strong rural community culture, and rural communities have often kind of rejected this energy transition, or maybe not rejected it, but been a bit more resistant to it. And so unlocking them ultimately will unlock the rest of New Zealand. So that's what I'm very heavily focused on.
Amazing. And so how is your work, how are you working with also authorities, but also energy providers on supporting this electrification and this growing energy demand that will come in New Zealand, well, with the electrification of loads?
Yeah, so a lot of what I'm doing at the moment with Rewiring Aotearoa or Rewiring New Zealand is trying to advocate for regulatory settings change. So a lot of this comes down to, and this is not just across EVs, but EVs will play a key role in this because they're essentially a battery on four wheels. But how is it that we can make sure that the market correctly rewards the right technology? And so one of the big problems that we have is that if we don't change the way the market works in New Zealand, and I'm pretty confident what I'm saying in New Zealand applies to Australia too, if we don't change the way that the market works, we ultimately end up building out way more poles and wires than we need, which is really, really expensive, and the customer has to pay for those poles and wires on their power bill. Our goal should be to build out the cheapest and most renewable energy systems in the world, all right? And Australia and New Zealand can both achieve those outcomes. But the issue is that the price of delivered electricity to the home through those poles and wires continues to go up. Now, if all technology was created fairly, we could all argue quite comfortable. So not created fairly, if it was treated fairly, we could argue that the price of electricity on a per unit basis should be coming down for everybody. So the fact that it's not is a clear indication to me of a broken market that requires regulatory fix. Now, if you put a battery in a home, whether that is an EV or a normal Tesla Powerwall or whatever it might be, you effectively remove that home from the peak periods. And as a result, the whole cost of the network gets slightly cheaper by one household. If you pay that home to export during those peak periods, well, then they remove their neighbor from the peak period as well. So in actual fact, a battery is worth two households when you think about it that way. And so what is two houses worth? And so the problem that I see happening at the moment is a household of New Zealand is charged to take power during peak periods, which makes sense because that's contributing to the future need to build out poles and wires, because we build out poles and wires like we build out highways for those peak periods. But if they can stop the need, if they can defer the need for that build out, then should they be financially rewarded for that? And so that's sort of what we're really heavily focused on at the moment, and seems to be getting good leeway with the government of New Zealand. Because the other thing is when you apply that to farmers, there's 50,000 farms in New Zealand. My farm powers 25 homes during peak periods with my batteries, and we're not rewarded for that yet. And so that's a problem, right? Because I've spent the money on my farm to put batteries in, but my batteries aren't a bankable product. So how is it that you make something like batteries bankable? And if we do this right, it should mean that people actually get paid when they park their cars in the driveway every night. If they donate some of that spare battery capacity to supporting the national grid at 8 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. in the evening, or whenever your peak times are in Australia, which will vary from state to state. So that's sort of the big thing that we're focusing on right now. We have access technology access for the customer and a market that doesn't support it yet. And so that's the big thing that, big regulatory piece that I'm hoping to change, because then you should be able to get a mortgage at really low prices. We know in New Zealand that, if you spend $20,000 on solar, you'll get $40,000 back from that by the end of your mortgage. I can't say the same thing about batteries yet because the market doesn't exist for it. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. It's a long monologue.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I couldn't agree more about regulation. And I think this is what I mean from our side, from the industry perspective, like Schneider Electric is an energy management system provider, but we do advocate for regulations. We do advocate and work with the regulatory bodies here in Australia or in New Zealand to actually make things happen in the right way, but also accessible for everyone. So yeah, I'm really glad that actually Rewiring New Zealand is like working towards the same goal. And yeah, from the batteries, we see the same here in New Zealand. So is what we call community batteries, and there are many energy retailers that are actually doing programs to be able to incentivize communities to be able to create and put in place community batteries. So probably not everyone has solar, but everyone can actually access to the battery that is being like fulfilled with solar. So I think that's kind of the future that we are heading towards as well.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that we're struggling with in New Zealand is we're seeing sort of these community battery type things, but they're not necessarily ending up cheaper for the customer.
Right.
Because who owns the battery? Is it the people that own the poles and wires? All of that kind of thing. And so the ultimate thing is whatever project, reduces the cost to the customer, on a per kilowatt hour basis is what we should be looking at.
Yeah.
Community batteries, and I don't know about Australia, but in New Zealand, it's really hard to stack up against the finances of just putting them behind the meter in the home at the moment because of the regulation, even though like this is where, things are a bit perverse in that community batteries clearly would have a far greater utilization of that asset, and so therefore should be cheaper. But the fact that they're not cheaper kind of indicates a broken market, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. And I think this is all the conversations that we have here in Australia with energy retailers and even with the regulation bodies, is like, how do we make it accessible, and how actually communities can work to get them as well, because right now it's the energy retailers that are owning those projects. So but what if a community wants to put one, and this is where the access is complicated, and it's very interesting. It's same conversations that we are having here in Australia as well.
The last thing these guys want you to do is have customers generate and store their own electricity, and so that's this is the rise of the customer, the rise of the prosumer, and this is exactly what we need to fight for every day with regulation, is to make sure that the ultimate best decisions for the grid are the ones that lower the cost for the customer as much as possible.
And so just to end up with our conversation, because then Jack will be able to present the product. So what will be your message to all the electricians that are connected here in terms of, well, what they are doing today, but what will be their future in New Zealand as well, and what they should be focusing on for the future?
I mean, so the short answer is electricians are absolutely the future of this energy transition, and you're about, I'm not sure where electricians currently sit on the hierarchy of tradespeople in Australia, but in New Zealand, I think construction is kind of where most people go for their apprenticeships at the moment, and that is very much going to change in the next few years. I think that we have to figure out how to activate. One of the things that I would be very interested in doing is figuring out how it is that we can get people who, are not, and I don't know how it works in Australia, but in New Zealand, the only way to become an electrician is to get an apprenticeship, and that involves, crawling under floors for 3 years, and essentially being someone's someone's sort of servant, for want for a better word. But when someone's 40 years old and wanting to enter this industry for the first time, that's a very, very, not a very nice thing to necessarily have to do on apprentice wages. And so how is it that we can, activate to bring more people in? So one of the big things that happened on my farm really recently, we installed a lot of solar. We actually got some builders to come in and build our ground-based solar array, and then got the electrician to come and wire it up at the end, the actual dangerous part. And so I think, ways of working with other trades, because this is just going to become so massive. And I think it goes so beyond I've been presenting a lot in Australia on to farmers in particular about what I've done, and how I've saved so much on energy cost. I'm starting to figure out what ways of making really good money now. Like, I think the rural sector is just prime for some serious business opportunity. But how do you bring other people along that journey? Because the last thing we need is, I necessarily need is, electricians, trained electricians, and the skillful people up there on the roofs, putting the solar panels on. What we need to make sure is that, all the customers get served with your skill set as best as we possibly can. And to be fair to Australia, you've got a far better system than we do at the moment. And if anything, one of the things I'm campaigning for with the New Zealand government is to make our regulatory system, for solar installations and EV chargers and all of that kind of stuff, match that of Australia, because you guys install solar and batteries at half the cost that we do in New Zealand, just because you got it right. So in other words, I think just go hard and try and get as many young kids to become Sparkies, because it's, the other big thing, is Sparkies are going to be the key trade that ultimately solves climate. And not anybody else, but Sparkies. And, every customer of Australia and New Zealand is going to have to go on this journey of electrification. That's getting the gas out of the home, because gas is dumb in homes now. Getting the EV, getting the EV charger, getting the solar on the roof, getting the battery, and increasing our resilience. And with farms, that's not 6 machines, that's 21 machines, So all of this is going to have happen. I'm a fully electric cherry farm in Central Otago, and the only tradie that I have is a Sparky. I think that tells you something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
It's like part of the furniture. It's insane. He's always here. So yeah, it's good.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Mike, for giving us all these insights. Falcon, do we have any question on the chat at the moment?
If I'm not wrong, not at the moment, but we can pick that up as we still go by. Give everybody still some time to digest so much information which was shared by Mike and you, and pick that up by the end of the session, if there be. And I would like to thank Mike as well as Diana, you for the Q&A. It was really good to hear from both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, Jack, to do a presentation on our new offer, which is Schneider Charge in residential market.
Yes, hello, here we go. Got the mic sorted. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Jack. I do e-mobility solutions for Schneider for New Zealand. First off, just, big props to Mike. If you guys don't follow him on socials or LinkedIn, probably one of the leading voices or educational bodies, Rewiring Aotearoa. Definitely would give that a follow. It's some of the best stats coming out for New Zealand and sort of leading that charge. I'm consistently referencing their reports and stuff like that. That nation report you guys did a couple of months ago was brilliant, Mike. So big props to you. So I'll run through our Schneider Charge, which is a our new residential charger. Just a quick one. You can see my screen, Falcon, or just thumbs up. Yeah, cool. So I'll run through just quickly Schneider's solutions overall. So Schneider obviously has a lot of products globally and in New Zealand, and total e-mobility sort of infrastructure solutions are seen here. So we play across industrial, commercial, and residential. Today we'll just be talking about the residential side of things here, but they sort of the systems in the arrays are sort of similar across different sort of areas, right? So you've got sort of control or analytics, and then you've got load management, and then you've got the actual charger itself. So on the big DC side, as well as the AC, sort of in that commercial or big public spaces or industrial, you can see that you're going to have like a load management system and then some analytics, and then down to the smaller commercial and residential, you've just got sort of a smaller version of that stuff. So Schneider plays across everything, which is important to know. But today we'll just be talking about the homes, because a really important thing about New Zealand and the EV journey is that we have a very sort of high percentage of family housing. So it's not like we've got a very small footprint of a building with heaps of people in it, like around the world. So we can really utilize off-peak in the home charging, which just adds to the whole story, right? So really important there. So quickly an overview, pretty standard stuff from an industry sort of standard charger. So IK10, IP55, indoor outdoor, communicates over OCPP 1.6, which is the language which everything in EV charging communicates over these days. Operating temperature is pretty standard there, and then we've got some sort of basic things that are sort of seen pretty much across all suppliers these days. Most notably is the DC leakage protection. So the DC leakage protection is inbuilt to the charger. So for those of you who don't know, it's called a residual direct current detection device, and it's not a Type B RCD. So there's no breaker inside the charger, for those who don't know. And it's also, it doesn't send a signal to the Type A breaker on the board. It trips the unit itself. So it's a CT that continuously monitors the leakage back from the car, and it will trip the unit itself, and then it's self-resetting. So you take the plug out of the car or the plug out of the charger. If there is a fault on the car, it's obviously just going to trip again if you don't fix it. But, you know, so the point is self-resetting, so you don't need to get called out if you're a contractor and there's a fault on the car. So here we've just got an overview. This is a pretty busy slide, so we won't look through it all, but just some main things here. So you've got obviously a socket version as well as a cable version. Totally preference. They essentially do the same thing. If it's in the home, if it was me purchasing, I would buy one with an attached cable because I do not want to plug in the cable every time. Literally, it's the same thing. It's just a personal preference. But the socket version is the single and 3-phase version of the unit. So when you're wiring it, you either bring in a 3-phase cable or a single-phase cable, and then you can tell the charger which configuration to do. So that's really good for you guys as electricians. You know, it's one reference from through the wholesaler, one unit to get your hands on. Even the cable version has the same rear housing unit and wiring, so everything's the same sort of in regards to your guys' perspective. Just up here, I've put a screenshot from the app, which we'll go through in a little bit, but it shows the current rating. So you do have the choice here to manually derate, and that can be good, I guess, if a garage maybe has 20 amps going to it or something like that. Or if you've got a socket version that's, 3-phase, 22 kilowatts, you can dial it down to 16 amps a phase, which essentially makes it an 11 kilowatt charger. So that's really good there. That's the same with our commercial version as well, and we can sort of see that's where it's probably going in the market. So you've got the connectivity side of things. So we said it talks over the standard language. You can connect it over Wi-Fi or over RJ45. So obviously I'd recommend hardwiring where you can, but if the house has been pre-wired, then obviously you just go over Wi-Fi there. It's connected to an app, which is what it can or can't be. So if the homeowner just wants it to be a standalone, then that's fine. But the point is, it is future ready for. It does have the smarts in behind, which you'll be seeing. I'd say in the next year or two, there'll be some sort of a regulatory mandate that requires a home charger to have smarts. I would say purely for the control of it. The control from someone like a third-party CPO or an energy company or a fleet sort of management company or the likes, as well as to help with that load on the suburbs, the surround, of the home. So I'm not sure when that will be coming, if at all, but I'd say it would be pretty certain. I'd put my money on that will be coming in the near future. And plus, the smarts is the way to go. I mean, software is the real key here. These chargers essentially, the big safe ways of getting energy into your car, and you really want that software to take advantage, as Mike was saying, of solar on the roof or batteries or vice versa, right? So maybe you're working from home and you're sitting there all day charging off your solar panels, and then you run your nighttime things off your car. So that's all to do with the software and the smarts. So that's good that's all future proof for that. I won't go over the other two. I mean, this is a green premium product from Schneider, which means it's one of our higher sort of energy efficiencies as well as sustainable materials going into it. And then the easy to install. So we'll go over the ways it's installed for you guys, because I know that's a big thing. So at a glance, what are some benefits for the contractor? For me, the biggest one is installation time, and it's got commissioning time there as well. Commissioning is a pretty heavy-handed word here. You're sort of just connecting it to the internet, a little bit of configuration, setting your supervision, which we'll talk about, and then you're pretty much done. So it's not, commissioning a commercial one could sort of take a while, or commissioning a big system. This is really, really straightforward, really intuitive. Uses the Wiser Home app to do that. So no barrier to entry. There's some pre-learning sort of videos you can look at, but it's a really intuitive thing. And then the installation time. So this is given on the fact that if the cable's already run, so to get it on the wall, it takes under 10 minutes. Like even I can do it, and I'm, in my father's words, the worst contractor in the New Zealand scene. So if I can do it really quick, I'm sure all you skilled electricians can. We'll go over how that's installed, but what does this mean, right? It's time on site is the big one, and the reliability of the product means no callbacks there. So really good sort of benefits that I see there. And again, same housing unit. So if you guys are installing either the cable or the socket version, you're used to it. It's the same thing. Sort of no biggie. So what does the homeowner see? So this is what your customer, maybe they'll be asking questions. Do I get what benefits do I get from this? How does it connect into, say, pre-existing systems or ecosystems or the likes? Or they might be not asking anything. But basically, this is a look at what the app looks like. For all of you Wiser installers out there, you'll notice that it looks very similar. So stay tuned for the integration there. But first and foremost, you've got sort of just a basic screen. If they do want to be looking at it, you can see energy usage, and that's all goods. You can set your tariffs. So a lot of people will potentially be on night plans, or EV plans, which is essentially just night plans that you might be getting less kilowatt hour, less cents per kilowatt hour overnight. So you'd set it between, say, 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. to trickle charge to full. That will be your absolute cheapest way of charging if you're not just pulling it straight from your panels, which is really accessible for people these days. So you can do all that. So you can customize the schedule in there, which to me is the biggest benefit of the app as of now. And then you've also got your history as well. So the history is really good, I guess, if you want to go back to an employer, or just, if you just want to see, if you want to tally up how much you've spent, how much it costs to run your car over the month, stuff like that, which is really cool. We do have a little grayed out area here called Reduce My Bill. And it's not currently available in New Zealand, but we're field trialing in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. So this is to do with, hey, this is the integration into solar. So this is where the home, the home sort of energy landscape is going, in my opinion, where, people are going to be generating and, becoming a prosumer, as Mike said. So when you're generating, you want to know where it goes, and you want to know what's happening with it. And so that'll be a really sort of cool thing. So that will be whatever my solar is generating, put that straight into my car, or split some between critical loads, and so on. So really cool thing that'll be probably coming sometime next year, I'd say. So all the software is going to get a big upgrade, or a lot of updates in the future. And then just some notifications on the home screen there, just like the Wiser system does. So yeah, really just easy to use app. Will eventually tie into a lot more. So really good there. And as well, you can just use it as a plug and play system if the homeowner doesn't want anything, which is fine. I mean, a lot of people's cars can do the scheduling, so if they could do that, they're happy just with the plug and play. So the Wiser Home app, so this is sort of, I guess, to do with the OCPP sort of side of things. So for those of you who don't know, or don't maybe potentially deal with EV charging a lot, the Open Charge Point Protocol, or OCPP 1.6, is the language in which charging and charging systems talk over. It is open protocol, but there is obviously slight differences amongst most people's. ChargeNet might have a different one to OpenLoop and so on. But basically, what it can allow you to do is it can allow a third party to be a supervisor of the charger. And that supervision is really something like, is the charger on, is the charger off, how much power is it drawing? It can see maybe some remote diagnostics. It can also take charge history or transactions and display them in a meaningful, data stream, and then potentially provide that to whomever. And it's definitely, if you can imagine, if we have, on a very small scale, if we've got 100 houses in a suburb and they've all got EVs, and they all come home from work and they plug in and so forth, and let's say none of them have batteries to discharge from, and they've all got spark pools or the likes or whatever it is, and they're all using that demand, it's not very good physics equation for a transformer or the grid or the likes. So you're going to have potentially, in a few years, maybe these third parties or potentially even could be the energy companies, where they can just sort of see the charges, and they can just quite quietly ramp it down to say 16 amps or 10 amps or the likes, just for like 30 minutes, right? And then bring it back up. So that may be a good example of why a CPO would be looking after home chargers. Another example would be fleet. So if you've got, company of 100 staff and you've all got EVs and, you want to charge at home, there needs to be potentially a point of contact for tech support, or just some sort of uniformity to do with charge records or transactions. So that's when you engage a CPO again, and they would just, look after in the background. They'd have that software running. Something goes wrong, that's you can call for some remote diagnostics, and then all the billing and side of things can be really handy for fleet managers. So there's a few use cases, and definitely I think as more market penetration happens, we'll see better and better software and use cases come out. But just for now, it's worth mentioning. So you can imagine this Wiser Home app that you give to the homeowner. That's the most basic level of supervision, right? So you're giving the homeowner to be the supervisor, and they can use their home app and they can do all that. But there is an option now that you can give it to a third party supervisor. So I will admit at now would probably be very, very low use case, and it will be, the largest, or if you're looking after a fleet or a company or something like that. If you're just doing a one-off charger for a home, that won't be the case, not yet anyway. So I guess the main point is, future-proofed. So once these things are on the wall, you can change them with software pretty easy. So you won't have to go, ripping out chargers. Right, so that's a little bit about the charger. Secondly, I think an important thing a very important thing to talk about is the load management system for the charger. So this is currently optional. There's no regulation or mandates around having to have a load management system for a home charger. A lot of Sparkies I talk to think this should be compulsory and mandatory. So again, it's in best practice, I'd say, is to put a load balancer on it. I mean, if a house does have heaps and heaps of spare power, then obviously it's probably fine. But with like I said, the electrification of homes, there's more and more power being used in the home, and you don't want to you don't want it getting hogged by a 32 amp charger on the wall, maybe over dinner or when the spark pool's heating up or when you're drying clothes or the likes. You'd rather just, work in the background overnight. So Schneider has a peak controller. So an anti-tripping unit, load management system. It's a 4-way, it's 4 modules wide. It's a little load shedding contactor in a roundabout ways. Sits on the switchboard next to the RCBO for the charger. And it connects back into the charger via the TPS. So it communicates over power line communication. So there's no extra comms cables for the charger. So this is, this is really good for pre-wiring, as a good example. If you haven't got a 2-core run from the switchboard, if you just have the power cable going, then this is really good. It also leaves it does leave it optional. Like I said, like if there is that home where it's like, oh man, these guys, they have tons of power, you don't need to put it in for now. Maybe you can put it in later. But yeah, it's a really good set and forget type thing where you set the headroom on the house. So let's say 63 amps is probably a good estimate. Charger draws 32. So as soon as there's 64 amps being drawn, this will just ramp down the charger, take away the amps, right? So that means the house can continue with its load, and it can continue, you continue using your induction hob or the dishwasher or whatever's using the power, and then say around 8 p.m. when you stop and you're settling down a bit, it will just designate the power back to the car charger. So it's set and forget, which is really good. It's peace of mind. It stops the trip at the or blowing a pole fuse or the likes. You can have up to six of these on one phase, so it's one peak controller per charger. So, and you would think if it talks over the phase, then it could very well, they could obviously interfere with each other. But now you can actually pair it to a charger over the phase, and you can have up to 6 on one phase with 6 chargers. So, yeah, really, really good, nifty little unit. Again, this is like trade, 300 or trade 350 or something. So it's a real, it goes into a lot of installs that I see. Yeah, like I said, Sparkies think it should be compulsory. Yeah, I think there should be at least a proof that you don't need it. If you're, or something. There should be, because we've got to be careful about blowing up a pole fuse or tripping the main brake all the time. This is what you'd see on the app there. So you just see that, hey, there's not enough power available, and it would have a warning sign. So next, into the protection. So what do you need to protect these things? What do you need to be compliant? So like I said, the DC leakage is inside the charger, and WorkSafe recognize in conjunction with an RDC DD, so you can get that, you can get that compliance or the docs from us as a supplier. You can just put a Type A breaker on the board. So obviously you still need to protect the cable with an MCB. So you may, if it's single phase, you just use a 2-pole RCBO. Really easy, just a Resi 9 RCBO there, as you can see at the top. It has to be a 2-pole because you have to switch all active conductors. This is in WorkSafe, so yeah, you can't just have a single pole because you need to switch the neutral as well. For the 3-phase and for the 3-phase versions for both of them, obviously the 11 kilowatt one, you can go down to a 20 amp breaker because it's only delivering 16. But for both of them, you're going to need a separate MCB, a 4-pole MCB and a 4-pole RCCB. We don't do a 4-pole RCBO. I'm not too sure if anyone out there does. If you can find one and it's compliant, by all means, you can use that. I haven't seen one, I don't think, but yeah, so you still need to use. But if they've got 3 phases going to the house, I'm sure they'll potentially be okay with a board. Taking up that much space in a board. And the peak controllers, they're exactly the same. They look exactly the same, same price, but you just do need to pick the single or 3-phase one if you're going to get it. Right, so I've just got the, so now the most important part potentially for you guys, the install. So this is just a short little, it's only 2 minutes long, and it shows how to install the Schneider charge on the wall. So this is a really, this is probably the biggest thing I talk about, because we got a lot of feedback from my last one. You guys are the ones putting it on the wall, and this time we've really hit the nail on the head. So I'll just share some sound and then play the video. Great. Yeah, so as you can see, it's pretty straightforward installation. We'll just run through some of the key points there. So same rear housing unit is a big one, regardless of cable or socket version. Also the mounting bracket that you saw, which you can't see here, whatever surface you can get that onto is where you can mount the charger. So a wooden post, a wall, pretty well anything, as long as you can get that metal bracket on it. Because you've got top down cable entry back and up, you can pretty well put the charger anywhere, which is really good. So you got multiple gasket sizes there in case, 10 or 6 mil cable or 3 or single phase, depending on what you're doing. This doesn't compromise. This is the thing that rates the IP. So if you have a top down cable entry and you knock out that conduit entry, it won't compromise the IP rating, because that little gasket here is where the gate to the electronics. So pretty good there. A bit of flexi down around the bottom or in from the back or up from the bottom there for the cable entries. And then there's the better version for the gaskets. And then another thing, as you can see from the video, so this rear housing unit sits on the wall, and then obviously your cable comes through and then it goes up into it. So you wire it up on the wall. So hands-free sits on the wall and you've got 2 hands to wire it up. That was an unfortunate thing of our last charger, where it didn't sit on the wall freely. So, we listened to the installation feedback there, and we've amended that, which is really cool. There's your wiring diagram. So there's your spot for your RJ45. Don't take notice of these top right inputs there. So this is obviously a global product. Schneider is a global company. Multiple countries use different wiring standards and things like that. So in New Zealand, all we need to do is focus on the protective earth neutral line 1, 2, 3, or just line 1 in the RJ45. So no need for an IMNX or the others. And then so the secondary plate there, the green one, captive screws, so unlosable. So they're Phillips heads, they just go on there, and then the white casing has the T20 screw, and you're all done. So really easy to install there. This little button on the side here, this is what can pair it to the peak controller, if you do have one. So again, we've got videos for that, just like you saw, and they're in the installation manual. So pretty easy to do on site there. So in terms of resources, what's the time? Oh yeah, we'll just run through the resources. So you just saw there how to install Schneider Charge. It's on the Schneider YouTube, and then how to commission. So with the Wiser Home. Obviously, we've got the user manuals online, as well as the commissioning tools, all online if you want to read over it pre-going to site, as well as they're in the box there. Some assets as well. So we've got some digital content which may be of use, and then also we've got our flyers over here. So we've got a home or a home user flyer, so something maybe you could present to your customers. And then on the right, we've got the electrician one, which sort of just basically gives a boilerplate thing there, about EVs and charge times and so on. So these are all available online, as well as just ask one of your Schneider reps or myself. Obviously we can hook you up there. And then also some wholesalers will have these. So this is a life-size little cardboard cutout that we've got that sits on the wholesaler's counter in terms of opening up, and it has all the characteristics or the technical characteristics there, as well as on the other side, it's got how it's wired and all the main parts about the wiring. So that should be sitting in potentially a bunch of wholesalers around you. Who knows, they might let you borrow it, or maybe we can look at some moving forward. So nice little marketing tool there.
Once again, thank you everybody for joining us, and special thanks to Mike for removing your time. So it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.